Good morning, class, and I hope everyone is doing well today. So, today's lesson is going to be about adaptations. But before we go into our lesson today, we're going to recap what we did last time. So, last time we had talked about biomes and the different characteristics that make up a biome. So, does anybody remember what a biome is? A biome, if we remember, is a habitat or a place an animal lives. We also mentioned four major biomes, which they are the Arctic tundra, the desert, the rainforest, and the coral reef. So, does anybody remember what kind of characteristic make up each biome? For the rainforest, it tends to be very, very rainy, hence the word rainforest. It also tends to have the same temperature year-round, and that is among our only biome that has the same temperature that we talked about. Then we have the Arctic tundra. The Arctic tundra has no trees, and it is very, very cold. Then we have the desert, which tends to be very hot and it tends to be really dry. And then we have the coral reef, which the coral reef, if we remember, tends to be in the ocean and tends to be rather warm because it's towards the bottom-ish part of the ocean. So those are our main biomes. So today's lesson is on adaptations. So before we get into more of our lesson, I want you to complete a KWL chart, which, if we remember, means our K is what we already know. Our W is what I want to know, and our L is what I have learned. So I'm going to have you work on that for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Okay, so let's recap and discuss our KWL chart. So, what are some things we already know about adaptations? Well, we already know that adaptations have to do with our biomes, the four different ones, and also have to do with animals. What is our W? What is something that we want to know? We want to know maybe the characteristics that make up our biomes, maybe the different animals and how they survive. And the L, we will come back to later on. So today's lesson is about adaptations. So an adaptation is basically a way an animal survives in a biome. It could be a change, it could be to their surrounding, it could be physically, or it could be behaviorally. So let's think about this. For example, a duck has webbed feet. Why do we think a duck has webbed feet? Could it be for the reason of swimming? Could it be for the reason of it's just meant that way to be? Which we would call that a physical adaptation, because that is something the duck is born with. So the duck has webbed feet so it can swim. Then behavioral adaptations is our second one. A behavioral adaptation, let's think. So the first part is behavior. So we know behavior means that it's how we act, how we do things. So for example, a behavior would be a bear tends to hibernate. That's something the bear is preparing itself for and actually doing. Then there is a third type of adaptation, which that is a climate adaptation. A climate adaptation, let's think. So climate is a place where things live, similar to a biome. So a climate adaptation would be that there are bears in the forest or in the rainforest, there are trees which they can climb on. So that's something that's in the climate. That's what they like to do sometimes. So um, then, so before we go a little bit farther, I have a video that we can watch on adaptations that will just kind of put this a little bit more into perspective for us. So we're going to watch the video and then we'll come back. So, recapping from our video that we had learned that the black bear has a climbing adaptation, which this is more from a climate kind of approach. A physical adaptation that we can observe from our video is that the bear itself has nose, his senses he can use for his nose, and also he also has muscles that help him. And then there's the behavior. So the behavioral part for a black bear is that he knows that he needs food. So he will act in a way that can be a little bit defensive at times to other bears for his food, but also can be a way that can be beneficial to him. So how do you think we as humans have adaptations and connect to this? Let's think about it. For a human, we have different things that we do in order to survive in our environment. So, well, number one will be physical. So we are made with different parts of our body that we can use, like our arms, our legs, in order to move any type of movement that the body does, in order, whether it's walking, whether it's just moving your arms. That can be number one. Behaviorally, we know that there are certain things that we need. So we know that we need food. So, and when our body is hungry, it tells our brain that we're hungry. So that's a behavioral. So we eat as the response. Then there is our climate. So when it comes to that, our climate, we have different climates that we live in, whether it's cold, warm, it depends on where we live. But the basic thing that we all need in every climate that we're in is food, water, and clothing, and also shelter. Those are the basic ones we need in order to survive. So now I'm gonna have you do a project that this is gonna be our project. So basically, we are gonna use the biome chart. So we have our coral reef, our desert, our Arctic tundra, and our rainforest. So what we're going to do is you are going to choose one of our 4 biomes that we have here. And then your task is you're going to create a new animal, or it can be an existing animal. It basically will be based upon the environment, the original environment, and then also you're going to have it adapt to a new environment. So some things we need to include in our new animal and our new biome. We need to include, number one, what kind of name are you going to give it? It has to be very creative. So just think outside the box. Number 2, we need adaptations, or the way our animal is going to survive in our new environment. For example, let's think about it. Say if I talked about a toucan. A toucan lives in the rainforest, so it tends to be rather warm, and also it has certain characteristics, like it has a strong beak to break its food, and also it tends to fly, and there's trees. So what would happen, say I wanted to take our toucan and put it in the Arctic tundra. So now what would it need? Arctic tundra would be really cold for the toucan, so it would be a little bit harder. So we would have to consider what are some characteristics our toucan would now need being in the tundra. So for example, I would say that the toucan now would need some type of basically some type of more feathers to keep it warm, number one. Number two, it would need since it doesn't have trees, it would have to figure out new places to live. So maybe the ice or a cave or some type, maybe in the Arctic. And behaviorally, how do you think that would change? So the behavioral, it would need to know, since it's cold, I need to do a certain type of thing in order for me to survive. So that's kind of like what you're doing with your project. So on the basis of that, you're going to create a new animal and then take it from whether it's from original biome, and put it into a new biome. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to draw first your new creature, and you're going to give it a name. And then from there, what you're going to do is you are going to basically identify and label 3 adaptations or ways in which your new creature can survive in its new biome. And then once you have completed that, we're gonna take that and write a paragraph, just kind of explaining about your animal, why you chose your animal, the adaptations you chose for your animal, and also the new biome you put it in and why you chose the biome. And in the biome, you're also going to explain how the adaptations are going to benefit your creature and how it's going to be able to survive. So we're going to work on that for a little bit. And also, we're going to identify, in the end, you're going to identify, tell our class, basically, the identification and labeling of your adaptations. And then you're going to tell us your animal, tell us the new biome you chose, and also the just the benefit of those adaptations for your animal. So we're going to work on that for a few minutes. And yeah. Since this is a inclusive classroom, there are some accommodations and ways I would go about doing UDO. So I would do 3 different type of projects, in which the first project mostly focuses on our planning page and tends to go from a more writing and more they're actually doing this, writing it, drawing it, and going about the adaptation and detailing it. The second option is more from a computer approach. So basically what they're doing is making a presentation and doing this either on their computer or an iPad, and they are drawing in their animal, putting all their information together, and if they want, in order to help them with auditory, they can include sounds and of their animal and how and different sounds of the biome, the new one they're in, and they also could talk about it if they wanted to. And then our third final project option is for more of a kinesthetic and tactile approach, which basically is going to involve our students using body language and basically coming up with different motions and showing us like how we can adapt our animal and just showing us the different elements of the biome. So that would be more of a hands-on movement and tactile kinesthetic approach. So that's like the basis for that. I think for CP, to help them, it would be more of a advantage for them to do a oral kind of thing, with also having someone write for them, whether it's a one-on-one TA or a student that could help them write their stuff, and also they would give an oral presentation. For our ASD students, I would do either have them use a computer or iPad to make a presentation, so it's more visual oriented, because they tend to do more well with using some type of visual. And also something else that might be quite beneficial, if they don't want to do that, the ASD students, I would do more. Let me pull up the standard. Would cover the standard of NGSS LS 5 points. I would say 5.1b, which is an organism's external physical features can enable it to carry out life functions in its environment, and also the NGSS LS 5.2b, which focuses on the animal's response to the change in their environment, which would be the behavioral adaptation. And then NGSS LS 5.2f, which focuses on the animal's behaviors and influenced by the environmental conditions, which would be from the more combining our behavioral adaptations with our climate adaptations. And then I would use a cross between our structure and function, and also our stability and change, because their structure and function would go towards our adaptations, and our change and stability would be how the animal adapts. The different changes could be for the different biomes, and the stability would be the things they need in order to survive. And then I would make sure that they're using some Common Core standards, which I would use Common Core Standard L 3.3, which uses their knowledge of a language in conveying their reading, writing, or speaking. And then Common Core Standard RI 3.7, which uses the information from a picture and words in a text to demonstrate their understanding of the event. And also Common Core Standard W 3.2, which takes a writing information or the topic and basically conveys their ideas and information clearly. And so that would be the basis of this whole lesson for them. And yeah, this is how I would teach adaptations to a third grade classroom, including it being inclusive and having 5 low incidence disabilities in it. So yeah.